Good evening. It's Friday, October the 11th, and we are here to do the tick by tick report. And we're going to be talking today about the market, how they've been behaving, what we expect Monday morning. We expect that the market will open up again, and we'll every week keep on going up, saying that there's no end. There's plenty of money out there apparently, and I've been waiting for a sell-off, but it's not happening. So with that, folks, we're going to see you on the other side. And remember that on this video, that we're going to include the Bitcoin report that I have for you that I promised you last week. This week is coming in. It's on this video, and it's going to be a separate one, just strictly on Bitcoin, on either one. But this time they're going to be together in here. So with that, I see you on the other side, and let's go and see what tick by tick have for us next week. Good evening. It's Friday, October 11, 2024, and this is Tick by Tick. So let's get started with the Dow Industrial. Right quick, Dow Industrial, and we're going to see here that Honeywell, it was one of the best performers with 5%. JP Morgan, also a 5%. Intel, Goldman Sachs, we got very good stock moving up. Like I mentioned before, we're expecting, and I still believe that we need an adjustment sell-off, but it's not happening. More money keep on coming in and prices keep on going up, even though we have a lot of stocks that are not participating in the market. As you know, today, I promised you last week, we're going to have the Bitcoin report and why I sold on Bitcoin be the thing of the future. So you're going to see a video coming up in regard to that. And believe me, I think that Bitcoin within 5 years, it will be $125,000. And I explain why on that part video. This is coming on part 2 of today. So the Dow Industrial was down 2%, and Boeing is 2%. Boeing got a lot of problems, Disney, and so on. But Honeywell's, Intel, Goldman Sachs, and IBM, Cisco, they moved 2% this week. With that, we're going to check the next one. Let's see about Nasdaq 100, and as you can tell, super microcomputer was up almost 15%, 16% this week for the week. Scalar, MBE, CrowdStrike, Fastener 9%, and even Palo Alto Network, PAN, it was 9% up. It's amazing that all this stock keep on moving, but the Nasdaq 100 did real good this week. On the other side, the losers are Tesla. Tesla lost 12%. We're expecting probably to start going up Monday because we think they oversold it. So Monday morning, if you buy Tesla, probably it will go up to recover part of that 12% loss that it was right about $20. CG Constellation Energy is down 6%, but remember, these are the people that do the nuclear for the power plants for the database companies that are coming up. So it's expected because it's been going up quite a bit, so don't give a hope yet. With that, let's move to the next one. Let's take a look at the S&P 500. And we notice that Norwegian Cruise Line, will you believe, 14.6% up in a week. Carnival, 13%, 13.87 for the week. Air Products, 10%, Fastener, 9%. Royal Caribbean is up 9%, and Palo Alto Network is part of the S&P 500. We already saw that. And Generacs are moving. Seems like the storm in Florida and all that, they sold a lot of generators, so a lot of people thinking they should have more reliable energy at home, electricity, so they are on the rise again after they having serious problems before. But Norwegian Cruise Line and Carnival and Royal Caribbean, I remember when Royal Caribbean was $14 a share during the COVID, and now it's $180. Man, do I miss a good one there. On the other side, Tesla, which is also where they lost the 20%, Lumen Technologies, First Solar, and all these other ones are having some losses. Let's move to the next one real quick, just so we can get into that Bitcoin session that we have, so we can put it in time. As you all know, I try to keep this video within 30 minutes, so we have to be short over here to make up the difference on the other one. On the US market, there are about 12 of them, and we noticed that the utilities are down, and S&P 500 they're up, S&P 500 plus 1%, so everybody breaking new records, but I expecting that we will have a correction, but it's not happening, so we have to live with what we got. We don't have no crystal ball to make a decision on it. So transportation has moved very well, and things look good. It's changing. We see a lot of more green on the carpet. On the S&P sectors, we're having a good week also. We got some losers, utility like we know before, but technology is up 2.5%. Industrials are up 2.5%. Healthcare are moving up, and materials are moving up, and staples they're all moving up. Real estate having difficulty, and energy is all going down. Some, so we'll see how that goes. So that's about what we have for today in regard to this week. So we're expecting Monday to be another update. I just can't believe it, because I was expecting to go down, but it's not happening. So with this one, let's move into the crypto. That is very important to us now. So here we are with the crypto, and as you can see, crypto is moving up. Bitcoin is US is up 7%. So more likely Monday going to be another update for Bitcoin. Right now it's close to the $65,000, and let's see over here. Yeah, close to almost $65,000, and I think they're going to break it very soon. So hang on there, because we probably are heading within the next 5 years to 125, and then the $65,000 is going to look an awful very small number. We noticed that other coins are keep on going up. We don't deal with those other ones. We're going to stick with Bitcoin. There are over a couple of thousand different coins or more up there, and everybody want to make a quick dollar, but we're going to stay with something that is solid and then gaining traction. So we see other one that they have lost 25%, like who knows what this kind of cryptocurrency is this. Well, there are a bunch of losers over there too. So Bitcoin is the big mover, and you can see 7.5%, 713 with the SW Bitcoin or Bitcoin USD, 7.5%, 7%, and then we have few other ones that are moving, ETH 2,500, but they are down. They haven't recovered yet, but they're one of the best gainers. Then this one is really taking a hit. It's coming from 35 or 4,000 down to 1,500 on this crypto. So we're going to stay with a solid one that they have a track record, and that's going to be the new currency in the future, as I mentioned before, and as you're going to see on the tape that we're making for you about cryptocurrency. So now with this, I'm sorry that we didn't discuss the Canadian and the French stock market, but We're trying to limit, like I said before, to 30 minutes. The video of tick by tick, our weekly report, and I keep my promise. So we're going to move in now into the Bitcoin report that we have for you, and I hope that it be of some help for you to make a decision and make a good investment and be able to make some money. So with that, we'll see you with the crypto report. Thank you, and I see you again on the other side. Good morning. We got the video for Bitcoin that we promised you last week, and why I'm a firm believer of what Bitcoin gonna do in the future. So let me explain to you what are the things about Bitcoin. Number one, let's think about the population of the world. We have over 8 billion people in the world, and about 25% of these 8 billion people do not have access to the banking system. Can you imagine that? These people cannot raise checks. These people cannot open a bank account because they don't meet the requirement that is needed in order to open a checking account or savings account. However, this involves a lot of people in many ways. For example, in Europe, in the United States, a lot of that they cannot open a bank account because some of them are in illegal status. Just the same thing in Europe. They don't meet the qualification, they don't have enough money. However, they have a cell phone, and that is very important. They have one of these, very important. That cell phone this cell phone is just like an ATM machine. All you have to do is download an app and you're ready to buy Bitcoin. You can go to any of those kiosks that have Bitcoins machines on it. You buy it, it goes into your account, and then you can make payments, send money to everybody else. So I'm going to tell you what I think about this new innovation of Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about the future. And the future of Bitcoin is that ATM machines, as we know it today, they're going to be gone. They're just like looking for a phone booth in any city nowadays. They're done. ATM going to be the same thing. There don't going to be no more ATM machines. This right here, this phone is going to be your ATM machine. That's what I foresee in the future. And Bitcoin is the right coin to trade and buy and make payments with. So we're going to accomplish through Bitcoin something that cannot be done before. All these people that cannot have a bank account, all they have to do is download the app, buy Bitcoin, put it in there, they can send money and eliminate the middleman. So banks going to have a little problem here because they are the going between or any transaction you make. And with Bitcoin, this is going to be over and done. So I have a different opinion before about Bitcoin, but now that I see the possibility, this is the place to invest. This is the future. So with that, we're going to see the video about Bitcoin, and then you make up your mind what you want to do. But we are in for the future on the long run, and I expect Bitcoin that within 5 years, it will reach $125,000. This is an investment opportunity to anyone that's willing to ride it with me. So with that, I see you on the other side.
So here I have two devices, and I will transfer $1 from this device to this device instantaneously. Enter the amount and send. I'm seeing the transaction now. And there it is.
What you've just witnessed is what looks like a standard financial transaction. Money was transferred electronically from one account to another. But while it appears like an ordinary bank transfer, it may perhaps be the most revolutionary technology you're likely to see in your lifetime. This technology is called Bitcoin.
Money makes possible the exchange of many different goods and services among many different people. Wherever we go, we see money being used as a medium of exchange.
Money is at the core of our existence. Every day, we transact with one another. Currently, almost all of our daily transactions involve a third party, a bank, credit card company, or remittance provider. And ultimately, it's these institutions that carry out the transaction on our behalf. This is until the invention of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is truly one of the most important inventions ever in the history of humankind. That's how big of an impact it's going to have on our lives. And it sounds really difficult and complicated and hard to understand hearing about it. If you had only heard about email, it would sound difficult and complicated and hard to use. Bitcoin is literally easier to use than email.
So what exactly is Bitcoin? Well, for starters, Bitcoin isn't actually a coin. Bitcoin is a new form of money, a currency that lives solely on the internet, one that some have even called magic internet money.
I think part of the confusion is that Bitcoin is actually two different things. It's both a currency and a payment network. And we've never had one thing that's both of those at the same time. So the dollar is a currency, but it's not a payment network. PayPal and Visa are payment networks, but they're not currencies. Bitcoin is both of those things at the same time, but it has this other property. And that other property is that it can instantly be teleported anywhere in the world, just like that, almost for free. And there's nothing that anybody can do to block these teleportations. There's nothing anybody can do to intercept these teleportations. And if you're careful about how you use Bitcoin, you can do these teleportations anonymously. So with Bitcoin, with a push of a button, you can pay anyone anywhere in the world or receive payment from anyone anywhere in the world.
Tone Vays is a Wall Street veteran. A former VP at JP Morgan, he now spends his time studying and educating audiences about Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is generally difficult to explain. You want to try and break it down as simple as you can. So the simplest way is basically it's like a message. It's a digital message that you're passing. And normally we're all used to computers. We're all sending emails, we're all sending pictures, but you're always sending a copy. Anytime you hit the send button in a computer, you always retain a copy, you always retain the original. And when it comes to financial transactions, you hit the send button and you have an intermediary, the bank, that is moving money from one account to another. And this is the problem that Bitcoin solved. It was able to take something digital, and when you hit the send button, you're not actually sending a copy, you're actually sending a digital object.
At its core, Bitcoin is basically a new monetary system. However, Bitcoin is unlike any other system we've seen in the past because it isn't centralized in one place. This decentralized nature of the Bitcoin platform is one of the things that make it so unique and world-changing.
With Bitcoin, there is no entity that's controlling any of that. There's just this software protocol that anyone can write software to interact with, and then anyone can install that software on their phone or on their computer. And once they have the software installed, they can now interact with anyone else, anywhere in the entire world that's also using the Bitcoin software.
This software that runs the Bitcoin protocol is commonly called a wallet, a digital purse which stores and allows the holder to move Bitcoins from one wallet to another. The Bitcoin protocol is open source, meaning that the programming code is freely available to add to and redistribute. In this way, similar to anyone being able to add a new website to the World Wide Web, programmers are able to add new products to the Bitcoin network.
We have Jason, for whom this is very late evening because he is in Australia, and we're about to do Jason's first Bitcoin transaction over Skype as our medium, so everyone can see how quick and easy it is. On my end, I will hit send, and Jason is going to hit request. So when he hits request, a QR code should have displayed in the middle of your screen, and he's going to put it up to the camera of Skype so I can scan it with the camera in my cell phone. All right, I see the QR code. My phone is trying to scan it, and there it is. I scanned it, so I feel kind of generous. Let's send Jason $5. So I have just sent Jason $5 in Bitcoin, and let me know when it's registering on your end that you have $5 worth of Bitcoin. And there it is. Okay, so that took about 10 to 15 seconds.
Bitcoin enables users to send and receive money instantly without the involvement of a third party. This digital breakthrough allows the user to effectively become their own bank. This is a complex idea to handle, but the possibilities of this new, bankless currency are enormous.
With the exception of actually handing physical cash to you, generally we have to rely on third parties for lots of different payments, be it credit cards or wire transfers internationally, or even sort of keeping cash under your bed, storing large amounts of cash, we use banks. And what Bitcoin does is allow us to do all of those things without any third parties. So in that sense, we can be our own bank, we can be our own payment system, we can be our own international wire system, we can be our own remittance system, we can do all of these things without relying on any other third parties. That's what Bitcoin allows us to do.
Before Bitcoin, all these companies like PayPal and Visa and Bank of America and any business, they had a ledger that kept track of all their account balances. So PayPal has a ledger that keeps track of exactly who has how much money in each PayPal account, and that ledger is stored on PayPal servers in PayPal's data center somewhere. And before the invention of Bitcoin, people thought that it was impossible. All the mathematicians and computer scientists thought that it was impossible to have consensus on a distributed ledger like this. But what Bitcoin did is it came along and figured out how to keep track of this ledger that keeps track of who has what Bitcoins. But instead of that ledger being on one data center, it's on everybody's computer across the entire planet that's running the Bitcoin network, including my laptop right here. I have a full copy of the entire Bitcoin ledger.
This public ledger, known as the blockchain, is perhaps what could make Bitcoin a financial game changer. Bitcoin is what is known as a cryptocurrency, meaning that it's a digital currency in which encryption is used to regulate the creation of new units and verify the transfer of funds. New Bitcoins come into existence through a process called mining. A miner is a person or entity who runs a very powerful computer in an effort to solve a complex mathematical puzzle known as a block. Miners around the world compete to solve or close a block and are rewarded with newly generated bitcoins if they're successful. All transactions that travel through the Bitcoin network are pieces of this complex mathematical puzzle. So when a miner solves a puzzle, they're actually verifying the integrity of each and every transaction.
Say if Alice wants to send Bob an email. What would happen under the hood is that along the path of the email across the network, her email gets copied in many places of the network. And eventually, the final copy will be relayed to Bob. That's how email works. That's how digital transfers work. And that's how it should work for the majority of digital transfers. That's well and good. However, in the case of money, that would be disastrous if that were to be the way that money was transferred digitally. You don't want copies of the same dollar bill to exist on the network. That would ruin the scarcity premise of money. And so this was the problem that Satoshi Nakamoto tackled with the creation of Bitcoin. And so what happens with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin's blockchain, is that when Alice wants to send one Bitcoin to Bob, she creates a transaction, and that transaction gets copied across the entire network. However, this is different than, say, a single email, because that transaction has embedded in it instructions to the rest of the network that says, from here on out, control over this Bitcoin is now conferred to Bob. Okay? And the rest of the network honors that.
One time I realized that, wow, Bitcoin is really difficult for people to understand, as I spent the whole evening explaining Bitcoin to a friend of mine, and then I got home that night and she posted on my Facebook page and she goes, yeah, I was thinking more about Bitcoins and you were explaining Bitcoin mining, and does that mean that Bitcoins are originally underground? And I realized that Bitcoin's a difficult concept for people to understand, and especially Bitcoin mining as well, because Bitcoins are not originally underground.
For new users, Bitcoin can be a difficult concept to understand. Bitcoins aren't physical, and they certainly aren't underground. However, there are some interesting similarities between Bitcoin and a precious metal that is found underground. Gold. Gold has been money and a store of value for thousands of years. Today, gold is mined all over the world. The amount of gold that can be extracted from the ground decreases over the life of a mine, until eventually the mine is exhausted of all of its gold. Bitcoins are also mined in a similar fashion. The Bitcoin algorithm is programmed so that the reward for mining new Bitcoins is halved every 4 years until the year 2140, when all Bitcoins will have been deemed to have been mined. Perhaps the mysterious creator behind Bitcoin was trying to mimic the attributes of gold, almost as if to create a digital gold coin which could be divided and then sent instantly around the world.
But what difference does it make whether we know who created Bitcoin? I don't know that it makes any difference. There's lots of stuff that we use that we don't know who created it. And yet it gives us a lot of advantages in our day-to-day activities.
I have no idea who Satoshi is. We know very little about Satoshi, and so he could be at an event, he could be someone we know, he could be someone I've spoken to, he could be a friend of mine for all I know. I don't know who it is. I don't know if we'll ever know, but it's a fun game.
Am I Satoshi? I don't think I'll answer that one.
Regardless of the true identity of Satoshi, what he or she has invented could have profound effects on how our world evolves into the future.
ビットコインで調べるとかっこいいな。そんな感じです。最先端を行ってる感じ。
Because Bitcoin enables the user to act as their own bank, in essence, it frees the user from the traditional gatekeepers to their wealth.
ビットコインはクレジットカードと違って支払いのサイトが、今まででしたら1ヶ月とか、60日後とかにカード会社からお店に支払われるものがビットコインだとそのサイクルが自由に決められますので非常に扱いやすいものだと思います。
We all use keys in our daily lives. Keys allow us to access and control our valued possessions. They also protect our valuables from being stolen. Take your car as an example. Holding the keys to your car allows you access to it whenever you wish. But suppose you've had a few too many to drink, and your loyal friend confiscates your keys from you. The car may still be yours, but now you no longer control it. Taxi! And must hail a ride home. The same can be said of our finances. Although you may have the debit card and password to your bank account, the funds aren't directly in your possession. Every time you make a withdrawal or transfer from your bank account, the bank is actually acting on your behalf and moving the funds for you. This is where Bitcoin is fundamentally different.
Bitcoin enables an individual to hold the private keys of their own wealth. So with pretty much every asset that we have out there, we don't directly hold the dominion or control over that asset. For example, the Royal Bank of Scotland, they had 700,000 accounts, ATMs, just went down for the weekend. Nobody could access the ATMs, couldn't get money out. You have a credit card or a debit card and it gets turned off because of suspected fraud, or you did a charge in an unusual location. Well, guess what? The credit card company holds those private keys. They get to make the choice, not you. Bitcoin is very, very different in this regard. It is built on public-private key encryption. And what that means is that you send Bitcoins to the public key, and then in order to send the Bitcoins, you have to be able to sign with the private key where the Bitcoins currently reside. And that literally is a number. That private key is a number. Bitcoin, nobody gets to turn it off. If you have the private key, you get to access it and use it.
With your Bitcoin wallets, there's associated what are called private keys. Okay? And these are literally what they sound like. They're private keys that can open and unlock your access to your funds. But let's be clear, if you lose any of your private keys, you lose access to your funds. Simple as that.
So we just bought some Bitcoins out of a local Bitcoin ATM. And so what actually comes out is what we call a cold wallet. It's a little piece of paper with two squares on it, or two things that look like Roche ink blotch tests, and a bunch of alphanumerics underneath each. Now the top is the public key, which is what people would use to send Bitcoins to this address. And the bottom one is the private key, which is what you would use to scan in order to retrieve Bitcoins from this address. Now it's very important to note that that private key is something that you really shouldn't be showing around everywhere, because whoever scans this first will be able to take the Bitcoins off this address. Also, if you were to happen to lose this piece of paper, then you've actually essentially lost your Bitcoins because nobody else has a copy of this private key. Right now, there actually is some Bitcoins on this address, so if you're seeing this for the first time, you may be able to scan this off yourself and take the Bitcoins for yourself.
So here is a Satori coin. There is a value of 0.001 Bitcoin inside. In today's exchange rate, that would mean about 45 cents. So it's a very minimal amount, but it is true Bitcoin inside. Now, how to redeem the value out of this token? One would have to peel off the hologram sticker in the back. Here we go. And then a QR code would be exposed. And this QR code is the private key information, which is essentially like a password. And with this private key, and only with this private key, one can redeem, you can import that value to your Bitcoin wallet.
Credit cards were never built to be used on the internet in the first place. When the credit cards were made, there was no internet. So a pull system is that you've given the authorization to the merchant or the credit card issuer to pull from your bank account whenever it is that they feel that they have the right to do so. With a credit card, whenever you want to initiate a transaction, you are effectively giving the keys to the merchant, right? And you give your keys to every merchant you deal with. So every time you make a transaction, for example, online or so, you're taking a risk because you're entrusting the merchant with this very personal information, which they could then take to initiate transactions as well if they wanted to. Whereas Bitcoin, it's a completely different model where the control is more weighted towards the consumer. The consumer then pushes their funds to you. And then, if you're doing an internet service, right, you could broadcast a Bitcoin address, and anyone in the world could send Bitcoin to you. If you were a band, a musical band, and you're performing on a concert, and your concert was being broadcast, around the world, if you put up on the stage a sign that had a Bitcoin address, well, you could be funded by anyone who was watching that broadcast anytime they watched it from that point onward.
Bitcoin payments are a push system, meaning that the funds are pushed from sender to receiver. This makes for a faster and cheaper system than traditional pull systems like credit card transactions. This in turn also means that Bitcoin transactions are final and cannot be reversed.
Credit cards actually has about a 6-month settlement time. Even though the transaction looks like it went through, the person can then call back and say this was a fraudulent transaction, and then the credit card will take that money away from the merchant in some cases. In some cases, the credit card will eat the cost, and that's a chargeback. Now, we pay for this. This is the 3% fee. Merchants usually pay this 3% in order to accept credit cards. So Bitcoin transactions don't have chargebacks. I think of it as a good thing. As much as people like to say how great it is to dispute things, it very, very rarely happens. Almost never do you order something from a legitimate company and you were not satisfied, and then the company did not solve your problem.
The first large publicly traded company to accept Bitcoin is Overstock, and they now ship goods to over 200 countries. Last I checked, Amazon only ships to about 50, 60 countries. So they're seeding entire markets with entire populations in the billions, not even fighting for that market share. Additionally, if Amazon accepted Bitcoin, there would be no fraud, there would be no chargebacks, so it would lower their costs. It would greatly increase Amazon's profit margins to accept Bitcoin.
Bitcoin allows merchants to accept payments for their products and services seamlessly. And although it's becoming a great tool for merchants to offer their products to previously untapped markets, it's the people in these developing countries who will benefit the most.
Something like 33% of the credit card transactions coming out of Africa are fraudulent. So nobody wants to take business from Africa. It's just too risky. With Bitcoin, you know the funds are good. So as a merchant, yeah, pay with Bitcoin. I'll sell anything you want, that's legal to Africa. Then they're able to start having property rights. And property rights is really what's going to help lift them up out of poverty.
So Bitcoin does get into this niche of the underserviced people in the banking industry. So a lot of third world countries, they may not have access to bank accounts. They might not even have IDs to open a bank account. But if they have cell phones and if they have access to the internet, they can now have the equivalent of a bank in their cell phone.
According to the latest World Bank figures, there are approximately 2 billion unbanked people throughout the developing world. The adoption and use of Bitcoin in these countries could transform this human rights issue and allow the unbanked population of the world to participate in the global economy.
For the first time in the entire history of the world, anyone can now send or receive any amount of money with anyone else, anywhere, instantly, basically for free, and it's impossible for anyone, including governments, to stop them from doing that.
I was able to find funding through Bitcoin. And this was in the midst of a financial blockade that WikiLeaks was facing. At the time, the US had ordered Visa, I think it was MasterCard as well, Bank of America, to blockade any donations to WikiLeaks. Say what you will about WikiLeaks. Not necessarily that I condone everything that they do, but I do think it is very important for freedom in the world, for people to have uncensorable ability to donate money to whatever political causes that they want to. And so I thought that was extremely powerful for WikiLeaks to be able to defy the US in that sense.
The true use of Bitcoin is to give you financial privacy, which I find extremely important.
During the global financial crisis, as cracks in the financial system spread, institutions once thought to be invincible were shown to be vulnerable. As we now know, governments around the world were forced to bail out financial institutions. A bailout is when government takes taxpayer money and gives it to an irresponsible financial institution to bail out their mistakes. A bail-in is different in that laws are written which permit financial institutions to take funds directly from customer accounts to shore up their losses. Such a thing occurred in Cyprus in 2013.
When I started learning about Bitcoin back in 2013, especially during the Cyprus event, when banks were shut down and money was confiscated from people, I remember telling my coworkers, some of the PhDs, the quants, this is really bad. This is actually gonna probably start happening in many other Western countries. And they were all laughing at me saying, no, it's just Cyprus, it'll never happen here. And that's when I knew someone must have come up with a way to get around this problem.
When a depositor deposits dollars or euros into the bank, title to the dollars or euros transfers to the bank, and those depositors become unsecured creditors of the bank. If the banks screw up for whatever reason, there's now been legislation passed in many of the countries where they can be bailed in, meaning that their deposits can be turned into shares of the bank.
In Europe is, on January 1st of this year, they passed a European bank bail-in legislation. So that should be a huge wake-up call to people that they're doing that. So in Cyprus, they didn't actually pass it before. So in Cyprus, they closed the banks. Then they came up with some legislation and said the banks could just take their customers' money to keep afloat. So they didn't even have that legislation, and they did that in Cyprus. Now they already have it in place, so they know what's coming.
And like what happened in Greece and Cyprus, where money in bank accounts was just confiscated. So if the next time the banking system gets in trouble, it could be users' accounts that are rated to help fund the banking system. We're talking people with significant money, 100,000, 200,000, but it's legal money. They've worked hard for it.
Some economists believe that the global financial crisis of the last decade was just a precursor to a much larger calamity. If this is the case, how will governments react in response to the next failure of our financial system? Unlike the current banking system, Bitcoin allows individuals to hold the private keys to their wealth. However, this also comes with the added responsibility of securing the Bitcoins.
I think it's part of the mentality where people are trained not to trust themselves with their own money. And so everybody puts their money in a bank for safekeeping. And so that sort of mentality where you put your money in some pooled company whose sole purpose is to safeguard it, that is a really hard stigma to break, to change. And I think this is the thing that's the most challenging about Bitcoin, is that it challenges people to question that stigma. It challenges people to take control of your own money and value and to safeguard it yourself.
The big question, the conversation you'd hear, is that the question was whether blockchain technology would impact the financial industry. And now, if you go to the trade shows and you listen to the media, the question is not whether, the question is how blockchain technology will impact and transform the financial industry. It's now a foregone conclusion that blockchain technology will impact the financial industry in a major way. So that's where we are now. But we weren't always there. If you look just 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the attitude was that Bitcoin was almost a laughable concept, and it was a non-sustainable system, and it couldn't be applied in the financial space.
I saw that the current banking system was rather restrictive, and the independence of people running their own banking systems really appealed to me. And the fact also that it was digital, and we're living in a digital age, I just knew that it was something that would have to get traction over time.
Bitcoin is definitely the largest innovation in monetary science since Isaac Newton's gold standard. Going to completely revolutionize how all of our assets are held, so it's going to disrupt law, going to disrupt accounting, going to disrupt our finance industry, going to disrupt so much. It will also rapidly decentralize the capital. No longer will millions of people accumulate all of their capital into one big pile that then gets allocated by a senior vice president of Merrill Lynch or Bank of America. It'll be millions of people that you have to go and entice out of their capital to go fight a war in Afghanistan or Iraq. Once you decentralize all of those private keys, it becomes much more difficult to get people to pay for a lot of these goods and services that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily pay for.
People are going to say, no, I don't want to pay for that. But if you're using bank accounts in dollars and euros, governments can seize all the money out of your bank account at any time. They can print as many new dollars or euros as they want to pay for these things at any time. If the world's using Bitcoin, it takes away those tools from government. And I think that makes the world a much, much better place.
For the first time in history, Bitcoin now provides the entire world with a completely decentralized payment system. One where each individual holds the ownership and control of their own financial wealth. One where all users can transfer value and interact freely amongst each other instantly. What could the future of our world look like with such a revolutionary tool? The possibilities could be truly magical.
Well, thank you, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video, tick by tick, of October 11, and the material that we have done research about the future of Bitcoin. I hope you enjoy it, and we see you next week.